Rock. Welcome everybody back to the Spinner Rack. I'm here with the boys, PD, Cal, Professor CA, and we're talking about Donner himself, Mr. Donner. He's known for Superman, the movie that helped to set the whole superhero movie franchises up, starting in 19. This was in 1978, 1979, Cal.
78.
78. From there, the father of the modern superhero movie. So we give him mad props. But in addition to that, Goonies. He was the director of Goonies. He was the producer. I think the director of probably the first two films of the X-Men franchise. He was the head, the man of the Lethal Weapons franchise. And of course, people talk about free will. But hey, what can we say about Mr. Don himself, the Don of the Don? Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to our boy Calvin Ellis to give us a little bit more background. Calvin, give us a heads up, baby.
Oh, first, rest in peace, Richard Donner. Know you're entertaining them all, keeping them all entertained thoroughly on the other side. This is a guy who, his career goes back to 1961 in terms of film and television. In terms of television, he worked on everything from The Twilight Zone to Gilligan's Island, The Banana Splits, The Rifleman. Just a really long career, both for television. And then, of course, his major hits with film, which Mars already noted. But he also had a production company with his wife, the Donner Company. And, well, if you enjoyed X-Men, they were pretty much responsible for every single X-Men film, from X-Men to Logan to Deadpool. Anything that was along that X line, came out over there. He did write some comics. He actually wrote a couple of Superman storylines, not a lot, but I was familiar with the Superman storylines that he did. And I look at his career and I just say, this type of stuff becomes rarer and rarer, where you have someone who's doing this particular thing for the long term. I'm in here. I love directing. I love working with film, television, the whole process. And this is going to be me from start to finish. Because, even at 91, he wasn't done with any of this stuff. He may not have been directing. His last film was, what was it again? 16 Bridges, 2006. That's his last film he's actually directing, but still involved in terms of production, all of that sort of stuff. I know some of us have our own personal favorites. Mine is going to be Superman. I believe with Mars, it's Goonies, because he keeps saying Goonies, maybe Lethal Weapon and such. But Richard Donner is one of these directors, and I'm speaking strictly with Superman, but he's one of these directors who's never going to be forgotten because of that long line of work that he's done. And you have a film like Superman, which is in the National Archives, where you have materials from that Superman film that have made it into Smithsonian, and he's going to be synonymous with that as long as people, as long as people can watch good, quality films being made. It's it's a testament to an incredibly long career that's going to live on it's going to live on, even though that he's gone from us now.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and say, obviously, Superman, would bring, would be the first thing I would think about. But even before that, it had to be obviously the TV credits of Above and Beyond for me, because there's so much stuff as a kid I watched, obviously, like Gilligan's Island and The Twilight Zone. But the idea as a kid, like seeing glimpses of the trailer of The Omen and being like, oh my goodness. And it's like, it makes so much sense because it's like the basic stuff that when you see the trailer, some of the basic stuff when you're struggling with a kid crying and stuff like that, and the kid sort of just playing around and inadvertently doing things. And you could see that sort of take on this character who's supposed to, had this inherent evil, but it's just done as like a regular looking kid. So it's a very powerful film, and I think that's what he was a hot. He had some buzz to get him to get to do Superman, or almost do two Superman films. And that's the other thing of I look at it as a kid, it was like it was really Superman, like going to the movies and then like really being Superman and not putting into as what we look at is because at that point I don't even see it wouldn't see like Silver Age, Golden Age. It was just anything of that from the 40s to that point. It was just Superman. So it was like really seeing Superman as a character realized on film, and even as Clark Kent in Smallville. So it's really a powerful thing. The Goonies kind of it sort of creeped up on me because it's something I'd see on cable a lot, and I was just like, oh, you kind of fall for that too. What else? I would say, I mean, obviously, I would go to Superman and saying it looks like the Mill movies doesn't look like a superhero movie. It looks like a movie that could go with all of the classic sort of 70s type film, and how like really looking like, even though it's Metropolis, having that New York feel and not losing it. It's not that easy for someone to do. You can find the wrong locations to make it not look authentic, but it really made having him be Superman in this grounded sort of town, really sort of the strength of it, where everyone else is like, put bright colors. We need bright backgrounds. We need to do like solid colors in the back, like that sort of thing. And he really sort of grounded it.
Yeah, he made it. What was the thing he said? He said, "We don't have to believe that Superman's real. We just have to believe in the world that's created for him, and by making that world is, life is much like our own as possible in terms of the visuals. I thought that went a long way towards it.
Yeah. So it's there's such a strong effort for the genre, and really saying it could be done seriously, and have Christopher Reeve do it with a smile and not be ashamed of who he was as a character, and the idea of immediately thinking about it and then getting the right writer on the project and say, hey, well, it said he showed up in was it John
Tom
Malkovich,
Mankiewicz.
and he showed up in the costume, what costume they had, obviously not the one that they filmed in, and said, and they're like, we can't, like basically questioning their this thing to be able to do it, but then they obviously both of them was Richard Donner was already planning on taking it seriously. The writer, a killer script, utilizing all the settings that were already there, and just bringing something serious to it. So you can that's something that you can always look back on. The other thing is like the Lethal Weapon series, especially the first two. Even though I always somehow drag my father into this stuff, my father was kind of iffy on the second one because felt it was a little too like a supervillain type of thing. But at the same time, that sort of franchise is just very strong for a cop drama. And there's so many cop dramas, but it was just something that really sort of worked putting these two together. But it's not until Maverick that I realized that Danny Glover is like, I don't know, it felt like he was like a good 5 feet taller than Mel Gibson because he shows up in Maverick. And I'm like saying, who's that guy? Like, he's huge. Look at the little Mel Gibson. But I would go to Maverick is one of just a fun movie to watch. So it's like this guy who, but not only as director, but as producer, like just a strong quality, strong resume and strong body of work at the same time. And even the ones that you kind of like conspiracy theory, something that I'd still sit down and watch when you get that scene with the Clockwork Orange scene. You're like, oh my god, I can't take this anymore. So I mean, definitely on my end, RIP, and it's a talent that I always go back to and look at his films.
One thing I wanted to say with regarding Superman, when the Salkins got the rights, I've said this before, and I never tire of saying it. When the Salkins got the rights from Warner Brothers, got the rights to the Superman films and the franchise, that means they could do a whole bunch. They could do pretty much anything Superman related. They did Superman, they did Superboy, they did Supergirl. They would have done Crypto if they would have let them, but they got the rights from Warner Brothers relatively cheap, in terms of acquiring the rights to do a film. And a big part of that was that Warner Brothers didn't believe that they could do it. Warner Brothers did not believe that they could make a Superman movie. They were like, look at this guy, he can fly, he's got all these powers, he's got all this other type of stuff, it'll just never happen. So Warner Brothers, and they pretty much look at Superman the same way now, they were just like, okay, free money. You paying us for this, and it's never gonna happen. And the Salkins went, I remember who they had lined up a couple of well-known directors in terms of doing it, but they went after Richard Donner based on his work that they saw in The Omen, and of course the fact that he was willing to do it and that he was cheap, because the Salkins were trying to save as much money as possible at the end of the day. but he, he pulled it off. That's something else to say. We have the tagline with the film saying you'll believe that a man can fly, but this is the guy who actually made Warner Brothers believe it at the end of the day. They had no faith in one of their biggest properties at the time, but he came in, saw it, and at no point did he ever believe this was something that couldn't be achieved. And Superman, again, that's the gold standard. There's no superhero film at this point that you should say can't be made, because you were able to do with Superman in '78 with the technology and the stuff that they have then. All you have to do is have the right people and you can pull it off. So again, something that Richard Donner leaves for all of these guys. It's such just a great body of work and a high standard of quality. I'm always surprised when I find out that he directed a film, say like Maverick, and I'm like, oh, well, I really enjoyed Maverick, and find out that he's behind it. And there was so much stuff that he was behind that you've enjoyed, but he approached everything with a certain, definitely with the craftsmanship, quality, care, professionalism, and here we, again, just a great body of work.
Professor Sia, you got anything you want to talk about, bring in?
No, I just had so much like respect and reverence for both like PD's and Cal's kind of like really deep dive takes. I didn't really want to interrupt or take away from that. For myself, yeah, standard influence was a Superman movie. His take on it, I mean, the idea of even taking him on like a Boda Vista or like a Christ figure was genius. And that whole, I mean, when I first rewatched that movies like maybe 10 years ago, like I've seen it when I was actually, when the movie came out and all that, but when I was actually able to process like how well that movie holds up in terms of him being this kind of like, Superman is being selfless, and like Lex Luthor being like greedy or selfish, or even the way they played it out, it was like perfect. The illusions, the voiceover, the ending. I mean, he changed the game, like literally. And then I forget that he was part of the X-Men franchise movies, and to see that influence on that, to kind of have a stakehold in DC and the impact of how Superman should be treated from every other writer or creator dealing with him, and setting that tone with the X-Men in terms of being the first, knowing that was a metaphor, an analogy for race. Yeah, it was, and just people who were just like overlooked or underserved. Yeah, props, man. Definitely a life well led, and the impacts will be there forever. So rest in power, rest in prose, Richard Donner.
I mean, definitely, you guys have hit some of the great highlights and movies that he's done over the years, and I got to give him enough credit. But it's the one thing about Richard Donner that kind of hits me is that, dude, as I look through the list of movies and TV shows that he was involved in, I saw so many of them, and did not realize that he was involved in quite so many shows. I mean, clearly he had the whole action genre and superhero genre down. But when you look at where he started in Westerns, you saw him, he worked for some of the greats, the Desilu, which is, the company of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. He worked on stuff like, I'll just give some of the shows, and I don't know if everybody knows, but the Westerns were like the superhero movies of today. TV shows he was doing. He wasn't doing movies. When he was talking, he did Half Gun Will Travel. He did The Rifleman. And shows that people to this day, my parents and others talk about, like, hey, this is one of the stuff. He worked on Get Smart Comedy. He did Gilligan's Island. He worked on quite a few shows. We gave him a good enough background, I guess, that when he finally did his breakout movie, The Omen, come on, The Omen came out 2 years before Superman and put him on the map. That movie, was one of the big hits of the time. I mean, you think he was associated with the horror film back then? It's just amazing. And then you start going down the whole filmography after that. Superman, Superman 2, the toy. Remember the toy, guys, with Richard Pryor, Jackie Gleason.
We're trying not to bring up the toy, but
Yeah.
I remember it. I thought it was absolutely crazy.
I watched it a bunch of times, but we're not supposed to say that we watch or like the toy. Okay.
Okay. What about Lady Hawk?
Stay top 40.
The Lady Hawk. What about with what's his name? The guy
What about the Tales from the Crypt? That is the
Oh, Tales from the Crypt. That was crazy.
That the 93 episodes.
Oh man, yeah,
From 89 to 96, holding it down.
holding it down. Hey, and what about Assassins with Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone? I mean, we're talking about big dudes here. Not even talking about the Lethal Weapon franchises. You know, with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. You know, what else can we talk about? I mean, these are Scrooged.
You don't want to talk about Free Willy though, huh?
He just wants to talk about the tragedy with Free Willy. That's all he wants to talk about. That Richard Donner had nothing to do with.
Gentlemen, I gave you guys the floor, and you guys are attacking me in my thing here. All I'm just saying, enough respect.
You asked us if we knew the toy, so I had to respond then, right? That wasn't an attack.
It was an attack. But it's.
I would love to see a remake. I would love to see a remake of the toy.
And what about the Lost Boys, the vampire movie?
Oh, without
yeah. That's the thing. Yeah,
classic.
Thank you.
Classic. I'm just saying. I look at his movie and I say, Jesus, this guy was our childhood. You know what I'm trying to say? He did some of the top movies that we were really into. The genre varied.
At the risk of making this prosaic, what's your favorite Richard Donner film, Mars?
I can't say. As I look down the list, there's just so many.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You can pick.
You already said it. You already said it to us earlier.
Yeah, that's right. We know what it is. Just own it.
I don't recall what you
The Goonies.
You like the Goonies. Everyone loves the Goonies.
I like the Goonies, but I'm just saying that wasn't the only movie.
But you like the Goonies. You can bring that one up.
Goonies. I like Lady Hawk. I liked.
No. That's not what I asked you. What is it about the Goonies that you like?
We were kids back then, and that's an adventure.
Robin Green. That's what he said.
Hey, The Lost Boys was one of my favorite movies too. The vampires moving into the town and dealing with it. I thought it was excellent too. So it was the X-Men movies. I mean, they were not exactly what we would consider the best representation of superhero movies, but back then they were the ish. Dark Phoenix Saga was the ish. X2. What do you call that? What is it? The movie. What is it called? It's X-Men.
X-Men United.
X2. X-Men X2. I thought it was good. He did a lot of stuff, and I think you have to have this type of background where you do different. He did Western. He did horror. He did superhero. He did comedy. That is what you're talking about as a director. He got panned for many of these movies, and they made money. Because he was able to connect with his audience and say, hey, this is what these people really want to watch. And I think that's it. I don't see any of the stuff that he was nominated for an Oscar, but I can't believe the Oscar, the American Academy of Sciences and Motion Pictures and Arts will not put him in as a posthumous Oscar with this body of work and the impact that he had. Okay?
It's not going to, the whole point of being able to do work and produce stuff that you like, and having that thread, even going for the Tales from the Crypt and the Perversions of Science and some of the other, I think there's Two-Fisted Tales, where it's like this thing where he might not have been the biggest superhero fan, but he obviously was a big maybe EC fan because he did a lot of stuff in that genre. So it's interesting to see there's some little bit of history. And EC Comics by Max Gaines, and that's the stuff that was all teared apart by those hearings and that sort of thing. Those were the books that were kind of, but it seemed like there's a thread as far as the TV he was producing, where it be the Tales from the Crypt. There's a Two-Fisted Tales movie. There's a Perversion, which would be Weird Science, but obviously Weird Science, the name was already used, so they used Perversions of Science. So there's as you were saying, like being able to not just do different genres and different mediums, but do those well. Because ultimately at that point, I think when we were younger, you had what's that thing? Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah.
And that sort of period, even the Twilight Zone from the 80s kind of had died out doing these sort of one-shot anthology type TV shows, and to have Tales from the Crypt, that was something that people don't even connect that it was a comic book, and everyone just sort of taken to it and wanting to watch it. Whereas I think the last one I think was HBO's Watcher or something like that. And what was it? What's it? The Hitchhiker. That's a Hitchhiker, something like that. So this is what having it going for that many years from it's like 7 years, so that sort of things, and that's a whole different thing of being involved in. So there were superheroes, some humor, some adventure, like being able to capture some of those that sort of thing as a filmmaker, which isn't always easy because a lot of times your style sort of bleeds, or the auteur theory kind of bleeds into the other thing. You don't imagine, like a Tarantino thing without having some exploitation or some of the long dialogue scenes. And then when you're in there and you're watching Lethal Weapon as a kid, and you're like, "This the guy that did Superman did this." Like, I was wondering what happened to him. He did the Goonies. I thought that was who's that? I thought that was Steven Spielberg. Like that sort of stuff. So this is clearly a Steven Spielberg movie. Like, no, it's not. It's Richard Donner. Okay, whatever you say. So yeah, that sort of ability as a director to just sort of, you know, deal with the content in front of him and sort of, visualize it, bring it to life.
You're right. It's like it's just amazing. He was just as able to do different genres. Even Free Willy, whatever genre it is. So, what was your favorite film of all, Professor CA?
Man, for sure.
Calvin Mills, no need to ask you because you already know. And PD,
Don't do it, Mars.
all right. So, what I'll say, Superman.
No, I'll take last licks on it. You can have PD for now.
PD, what was your favorite movie out of that?
I would have to say.
I agree with you. I agree. That
Oh,
was
I
a
agree with what I said. I have to say Superman, but not just because of Superman, because of the longer version of it that they showed on television, which had the sort of comic book moments, had the wasn't it, had the dinosaurs or whatever Lex Luthor had in his basement, had all that stuff as a kid that I lost it for. And it had, so it not only had all that well-rounded stuff I said before, it had Miss Tessbacher in it. So I'm going with Superman.
Okay, Cal. I mean, let me give you a second to clearly, I'm the only one out who was not my favorite.
What was your favorite? Well, you said it was Goonies, right?
It was Goonies, Lost Boys. Those were some of my favorite.
All right, so it was Goonies.
So, Cal, what about yours? What's your favorite?
Well, yeah, Superman.
But didn't I? All right, so clearly we are in agreement once again that
No, it was to be honest, one of the things that I learned, I didn't realize how deep of a movie that was. I just enjoyed it because, I saw it as a kid and was like, oh, okay, this is great. I think, saw it on TV and, it was just, yeah, it's Superman. How could you not be into it? And then later on, I was actually talking with CA, and he's like, yeah, what about all the Christ figure imagery inside of the movie? I'm like, what Christ figure imagery inside of the movie? There's no Christ figure imagery inside of the movie. So I go back to watch it again, and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's Christ figure imagery inside of the movie. How did I not get this the first time? But I'm basically focusing on all the other stuff that's still there. But but then you watch and you're like, okay, a little bit older, a little bit more knowledgeable. And then I come back to it again. But every time I come back to it again, there's something else that I can draw from it. And I've always thought that is the best type of film, music, art, something that you can go back to periodically and like, oh, there's something else that you can actually extract from that. That was, it's such a great film on so many different levels with Goonies and Lost Boys, I think, really at a tie for second place. His ability to adhere to a single theme and really make that work at the end of the day, it is just amazing because you can find it through so many of his films. But I remember when I saw Goonies, when I saw Goonies, I wasn't expecting anything from it. I didn't see it in the theaters. Saw it like, TV one afternoon, had nothing else to do. And I just remembered the song was a hit. So I was like, okay, let me see this. And, you just find like, it's one of those great films that as it progresses, you realize, oh, this is going to be a good film. This is going to be good. You start checking like how big, it's only been half an hour in. That's good. I still got like another an hour and a half. I'm going to be entertained. And it's a thrill ride, but I think the biggest thing is you're watching it, and it really speaks to kids. That theme of the capability of children, where everybody wants to dismiss kids, like, oh, this, that, and the other, there's nothing we can do. And the kids, oh, no, there's plenty that we can do. There's a whole bunch that we can do. They come over and they pull off the impossible. That's that the sort of thing that comes over there. And then you get a little bit more of that in the Lost Boys, even though it has, the theme, of course, is very different when you're dealing with vampires. But all of that for me goes back to I learned a lot from him in terms of writing and the adherence to theme, and with Superman, but also that application that I'm not going to approach a Superman film the same way that I'm going to approach a film about teenagers fighting vampires, the same way I'm going to approach an adventure movie, with kids, in this particular town, or Lethal Weapon for that matter. This was somebody like, okay, these are all different stories. They're all different characters, and the motivations behind these things, and the universal message that's being sent out between them, all different. But he understood about the craftsmanship coming to the story. But with Superman, and for me, this is the last 1981 is the last time that anyone approached Superman with the care or respect that Richard Donner had. Right? I hear a lot of people saying good stuff about the Superman and Lois TV show. Yeah, whatever. The last approach Superman, okay, like, no, this is a competent, this is a competent hero, man, etc. No apologies for it. Was Richard Donner. Everybody else is in his shadow. They're like shades of it. That means even the best stuff still doesn't understand he was able to pull it off with so much smaller budget. Okay, none of these tricks and everything of that nature, but the ability to tell a good story and that adherence to theme. So that that's why Superman is always going to stand out. Hey, what can I say? Richard Donner, and if one of the many influences, okay, one of the all-time greats. Heaven's a better place. What can I say? Rest in peace, Richard Donner.
This would be a great ending. I gotta chime in. On 2 points. This is not in disagreement. This is just chiming in and saying that at times when I read the comic book, like Lana, I think at some point when I was like, Lana was just trying to find new inventive ways to trick Clark Kent into becoming that he's Superboy all the time, and then they did the movie where Lana's the one that can see him as like a someone that's nice that she wants to get with, but they're just not, he's just sort of, she's just not ready to break from the crowd, but she's interested. And that little bit of thread was enough to carry me to Superman 3 and be like, this works, even though it's not the same actress. That energy, that little bit, those couple of scenes with them two together, and then we get this movie where Clark and Lana are connecting again, and someone who sees Clark Kent as someone that's worthy, and then sees him like, you should be mad, no one picked you up, that sort of thing. So that sort of thread, that emotion, I wanted to see that movie, so I still always go back to it, but it's really from those couple of moments that she's, not in the movie that long. She's only in one scene where he has to clean up the football player stuff, and then the scene where he runs home, which is so powerful, and then everyone else is saying, "Oh, I told you." I forget what I think he said. He told you he's weird, and Lana's kind of like, "Wow, there's something something else to him." So it wasn't the exact same thing that we saw in the comic, but it was something very much interesting, saying this is a very viable character. And the other thing I would say is that let's not go and round the way about the Goonies. As a kid watching it, I was like, okay, this is another one of those Steven Spielberg things. I'm not necessarily with this, and then it's on cable, and I'm watching it again and again, and it actually was like the way kids are. Not to say they're necessarily having a definite leader, as far as what I remember hanging out with kids, because the leadership thing would always sort of shift when you're within your friends of who would be the new alpha in the situation, depending on what happens. But the interaction with the girls, where the girls were kind of their age, but they were not necessarily with the boy. They were shifting, and they didn't necessarily connect with the boys in the same way. But they connected with, obviously, with Josh Brolin. They're like, They're kind of like they're in the same age, but they're like, no, we're looking towards Josh Brolin, not these knucklehead kids that don't even know how to. But then they're still Goonies. They're still with them the entire time. So, and it really felt like the few times on the block when I was a kid, when the girls would hang out with us, and they weren't always with us, or we'd have to muscle in doing something stupid like they're playing double dutch, trying to jump in on that and that sort of stupidness that was going on. But more being a kid, and they're just like, we're doing something serious here, and you guys, and so it really had that feel of these girls really trying to get grow up, and the kids are like, we're kids, and that sort of push pull, which was very interesting and dynamic, rarely done on screen.
I mean, I guess because of his success, he was able to get talented writers, producers, actors, actresses. A lot of his movies. So which is really good. But yeah, I don't want to prolong this. I just want to say, hey, R.I.P. And we're all in agreement. Hey, great talent. Someone who made a huge impact within many of the movies that hit us during our childhood and in our adulthood. Spin Rack.
Out.
Out.
Oh,
Who sent